And intro, do a quick intro.
Sure. Welcome everyone. It's really good to have you over. We wanted to continue the sessions on digital check-ins with Lightful, and we're really actually happy to have Beth Kanter with us, master trainer and nonprofit expert. On the previous session with Beth, we tried to talk about dealing with mental health right now and how nonprofits can try and juggle between work-life balance and taking care of your mental health and also your staff. And if you've missed it, I'm happy to share the recording. We also have a blog about that. And today we're going to talk about getting better at online meetings. So we wanted to have a session that is more interactive and more practical, and trying to help everyone get the most out of Zoom, because everyone is now trying to be better at meetings and we're not all used to that. So it's really good to have Beth with us, and she has the experience definitely to help us with all the tricks from Zoom. Welcome, Beth.
Welcome, and thanks, Teresa, for that introduction. And I'm going to get us started. This is our agenda. So we're going to kick off with an icebreaker that you could, take back to your team and do if you're having a smaller meeting. It's always best practice to start with an icebreaker. And I'm just pulled out one. I have a post that has many icebreakers that you can use. We'll have a presentation. I'm using slides, not for the whole thing, just some tips on online meeting best practices, and ask your questions in the chat or share some of the things that you're doing. Then we're going to do small groups discussion, and it's the breakout room feature. And so it'll look just like this, but you'll be in a room with maybe 3, maybe 4 other people, and you'll have a more intimate conversation. And then we'll bring everybody back to the main room for Q&A and discussion and some takeaways. So as I've said before, cats, dogs, and kids are welcome. These are not normal times. If you need to attend to a young child, please feel free to mute and take yourself on video. There's no judgment. This is going to be participatory. And the outcome for success is that you can do one thing to improve your virtual meetings. And the slides and lots of resources and examples we'll be showing are all on that URL on the bottom. And I assume, Teresa, you'll be sending out a follow-up email with.
Yes.
Great. Yep. Awesome. Okay. So, the first thing we're going to do is kind of get centered and make sure that we're fully present at the meeting. And so to do that, I want to get a sense of where everybody is in terms of their presence right now. And we're going to do a poll. And the question is, how present are you in this meeting? With one being, I have 10 tabs open, another meeting to hop into, the dog is barking, my kid's running around screaming, and the door slamming, and I'm on mute. That's a 1. And then we have 2, 3, 4, and when we get to 5, I'm totally with you, like a Vulcan mind meld. So I'm going to launch the poll, and you should be seeing it on your screen. And if I don't know if there's anyone logging in on the phone, maybe Teresa, you could just page through.
Yes, I'm keeping an eye
on that, and we'll let this go for a few seconds until most have voted. What you see on the host side, if you haven't used the polling feature in Zoom, you see the poll, but I see like how long the poll's been going and how many of the total participants have voted. And you have to set this up in advance. I mean, you could do it on the fly, it'd be kind of stressful, and you can find that on your, you have to enable it on your Zoom settings, and then you find it on the menu and you write in your poll. And there's you can do multiple choice, or you can do one answer. And then you just click the little polling icon and it launches. And then when you're done, we have 100% voted, you do end poll and share results. And what I'm seeing is a bell curve. I've been seeing this quite a bit. I'm glad that we don't have anybody in number 1. That's great. And sort of like at various degrees in the middle. So I would invite you to think about what you need to do for yourself to move your presence up just 1 notch. And so one thing that I have been doing with teams and starting is doing a minute of meditation. And I've been using something called the Insight Timer. It's an iPhone, but it's also an Android app. and it sounds like one of those meditation bells, and I'm going to give us, it'll start in 5 seconds, and just give us a full minute just to do some breathing. You can turn off your video if you want. All right, there we go. Just a moment of breathing and quiet to become centered. And so let me, we're going to go, and we're going to do a icebreaker now. And this is one that we can do as a full group, and it works with small groups and large groups. I've done this with 100 people. And basically we're going to use the chat for it. And I'm going to give you a series of 4 different prompts, and I'm going to type those into the chat. I'm going to verbalize those. I'm going to ask you to reflect on it, to type an answer, but to hold off on sending it. And I know it's not our usual way of using chat. We're used to typing something in and hitting the send. If you oops, it's okay. So there'll be 4 of these. And I want you to think about all the complaints you have about online meetings and what makes them just awful, horrible. And so the first prompt is, if only ... So think about it, type it into the chat, but don't send it. And once you finish typing, you can send it. You can hit send and share it. So if only. I see if people didn't freeze, I will warn you that I already froze once today. But don't worry, if you see me freeze, I'll be back. It logs me back in. Yes, I see an array of interesting responses here. Okay, so the next, keep on sending them in. And the next prompt is, it makes me ... So think about it, type it, but try not to send. If you send it and it's an oops, it's fine. So I'm asking you to do something that is kind of different. Okay, now send it into the universe. And note that if, as we're seeing these fly by, if that's making you feel overwhelmed, you have the power just to look away from the computer, look away from the screen. We're staring into screens a lot these days, so it's helpful. There's a thing called Zoom overload. Easy fix, stand up, look away. Okay, so let's see. Great. The next prompt, the third prompt, is, I have to ... So think about it. Type it into the chat, but try not to send it. And now you can send it into the universe, send it into the chat. Great. Okay, and the last prompt is coming up, still send them in. When all is said and done, ... When all is said and done, you want to think about it, write a response, and then send it. Great, great. So this is great. This exercise, it comes from a playbook of facilitation techniques called Liberating Structures. Some of you may be familiar with it. I put a link in the resource document, but these are mostly face-to-face, but a lot of them can be adapted to online. And and the purpose of it is to get people comfortable with change. It's actually called a grief walking exercise, because when we go through a grieving process, we're going through change and we're kind of coming to acceptance. And you can make it very open-ended, so you can check in on people's feelings. We were doing that a lot, or you can make it key to whatever topic you're talking about. And it kind of allows people an opportunity to express themselves about the topic. Great, so what I'm going to do is switch into the presentation, and hopefully, there we go, everyone can see it. Am I good?
Yeah.
Great. And hopefully they will click. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some tips on, we've sort of reflected a bit on what makes online meetings awful, so don't do any of those things if you can, or some of you kind of have already been thinking about how you can improve them. I'm going to give you some tips around best practices. And so the first thing I'd say is don't wing it. And a lot of times we can easily like wing meetings. You know, we don't require that much formalized planning. Sometimes we don't plan our agendas, but I think with online meetings, and I think it's true for all meetings, that you really should have a good meeting is based on good design, and good design is like having, you know, what the topics are, how many minutes you're going to allocate to that topic, and who's going to be speaking, and also assigning different roles to it. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But I think the most important thing for an online meeting is to have more than one facilitator. Always have somebody else who's helping you with the tech. So right now, Teresa is my co-pilot. Technology stored. It makes it so much easier because, you know, you facilitate, you have to focus on the content, but then there's all this like, what button do I push? And it makes me really nervous to have to, I mean, I can do it, I do it a lot, but it also is such a gift when I have another person with me. And I only became comfortable doing all of it by doing it a lot and messing it up. And so that's my other point here, is that it's always great to do a practice session, so you can, you know, see what could happen. Teresa and I have done that. You know, if there's a new feature you're using, you know, you just want to test it out. So you're not testing it out in front of the group. When I talked about roles, you could have facilitator, a tech stored, a note taker. If this was a team meeting, I'd probably ask for a note taker, maybe a timekeeper. There's a couple of other funny roles. One is a rabbit hole monitor, somebody who's keeping us on track and not going down rabbit holes. There's a great technique you can use called Elmo, and it's not the red puppet. It means enough, let's move on. And when you do it on Zoom, you have this agreement at the beginning that if we go down a rabbit hole or get stuck, anybody can call an Elmo, and you can have people print out pictures of Elmo and hold them up, or else raise their hand. And then if anybody calls an Elmo, everybody else has to stop and raise their hand or put their picture of Elmo up. You have a good laugh, and you go on with the meeting. There's also a role of Yoda, and this is the person who is saying the thing that isn't being said at a meeting. So these are, you don't have to have all of these, but sometimes it's really good, especially with online meetings, to at least have the text stored. The next tip is to embrace new workplace norms for meetings. I don't know if any of you have remembered this. It was from a couple years back with a correspondent in Korea. He was talking about security issues, and his 4-year-old and his 2-year-old crashed the interview on TV, remember, and he was very embarrassed and he pushed them away. Well, that's not the norm we want for online meetings. You know, you are not just working at home, you are working at home during a global health crisis and also trying to juggle parenting at different stages. I have older kids, many people have younger kids, and they do need attention. We have pets, things happen. So we have to be more forgiving. And also, so let me show you a couple of things. Recently, these are just from a couple of meetings. I've met people's dogs, I've met their children. Sometimes we brought a couple of younger toddlers online to say hello, and all of us playing peekaboo with them. They really enjoyed it. So new meeting norms, okay? And it's a no judgment zone, and no judgment about my hair either. I desperately need a haircut, and I might get to the point where I actually will have my daughter do it. So, and then I will hide myself maybe. And that's my next point, is encourage being on camera. And I know that this is kind of a joke, little pie chart, but we're not used to seeing ourselves on camera. And I know in the beginning when I started putting myself on camera, first I never did, because I just thought, oh my God, I can't stand looking at myself. Does my neck look that bad? Oh my God, why didn't I shower? Oh, that's a bad angle. I look fat or whatever. But try to encourage people to be on camera. And there are actually a couple of tips to look good on camera. The first, and I'm using this, is that if you can raise your laptop on a few books so it's at eye level. And I have a light. If I turn it this way, I have a light to my side that's shining on me, and that's why I have that nice sunset glow to me. And you can also put a piece of white paper underneath the books and it reflects up. So that makes you look good on camera. There's also a setting on Zoom, and it's in the client area, and it's under video, and you can click that little box that says touch up my appearance, and it makes it look like you have powder on your face. So it hides any wrinkles or pimples you might have. And I have it checked on my screen, as well as the lights. The other thing is, if you have the right kind of computer, you can easily use Zoom backgrounds if you have a messy house. And I have in the resources, I have included a bunch of additional ones that you can download. And you have to either have a fancier computer, or you need to check the blue screen or green screen, whatever it's called, in the setting, and it's on your profile setting, and you need to be in back of a plain background in order for it to use. I personally, if my house is not too messy, or if I don't have any kids running around in the background, I really don't use it, because I like being authentic. And also remember to, if you do change the setting, remember how to turn it off when you don't want it used. There was this story a few weeks ago about how a boss turned herself into a potato during a video conference and forgot how to turn it off. So she was the potato during the whole meeting. Kind of made the rounds on social media. The other thing is to use lots of icebreakers and energizers. And I modeled a few today. I wrote a whole post about it. I think you can do, it's especially, during this global health crisis, maybe to check in on people's feelings, or maybe to have some optimism and have some fun. So there's lots of fun ideas for check-ins. One that I always like to do in person is the Spectrogram, where I actually have people line up in the room according to a question, but we can't do that obviously because of social distancing. So you can actually do this with having people show their hands. And I'm going to actually stop my share, and I'm going to ask folks, okay, do you disagree with the statement? Virtual meetings are engaging when they're interactive. So put one finger up if you disagree, 2 fingers if you are neutral, and 3 fingers if you agree. All right, so 1, 2, 3, put your fingers up and let's see where we are on this. Okay, and so I see a mix. All right, so that's just, another way to get folks active and do an interactive kind of icebreaker without being in the room together. Here's another one, and I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen. It's called Taking Stretches, because we're not used to sitting all the time on Zoom on our butts. And so here's a fun one. It's called, I'm going to do two of them. The first one is called stretching. So I want you to actually mimic my stretch. Okay, so everyone has to, if you turn on your video and copy me, and next I'm going to hand it over to Teresa, and we're going to all copy Teresa's stretch.
Perfect. Let's try a hand up.
All right. So you can do this, and then we could, you know, depending on how much time you want, I'm going to hand it over to Pauline. Pauline, hi Pauline, give us a stretch. Okay. All right. Great. So you can do that for a few minutes. You can actually stand up. You can do some shaking. Here's another one I'm going to do, and this one, I hope this one works, because I have to, let's see, get some music up. We're going to have a little dance party, okay, for just a few minutes. And here's the dance floor. So put your hand up, the dance floor, right? And here's the dancers, and the dancers are going to dance in your hands, okay? And I'm going to, hopefully this is going to work, get some music going.
You keep saying you got something for me, something you call love, but confess you've been a messin' where you shouldn't have been a messin', and now someone else is getting all your best. These boots are made for walking, and that's just what they'll do.
All right.
One of these days, these boots are gonna
Oh, walk all over you. Okay, so you get the idea. So I have a link to a bunch of fun little energizers. You know, long meetings can be something on Zoom, and you got to make them fun. All right, especially if this is what our day is. So, and to my next point is just say no. Too many back-to-back Zoom calls without a break is exhausting. More than 90-minute Zoom calls without a break is exhausting, okay? So I think best practice, 60 to 90 minutes and have a break, and try to avoid a calendar that looks like this with all Zoom calls, because there is a thing called Zoom overload. We're not used to like looking at each other's faces for this long, and sitting is not very healthy. So, and it could make you feel really overwhelmed. So one thing I've been trying to do is switch more to asynchronous work. You know, if you're doing things in Slack or Google Docs, to try to like have a lot of set discussion happening virtually on people's own time. And then when you come together, you will have already discussed it, so your meetings can be shorter. So, and if you do feel like, oh my God, we had to have this whole 3-hour board meeting retreat, chunk it, break it over a couple of days, or break it, you know, give a longer break in between. Breakout rooms, and we're going to use these next, is a feature in Zoom that allows you to put people into smaller groups and have a more intimate conversation. And you can use this for discussion, for icebreakers, brainstorming, voting, decision-making, planning, reflection. I just did this with a board that I work with. I'm on the NTEM board, and we just did our theory of change. We had a full board meeting, and we used the breakout groups so we could actually have it, do it in small discussions. So, what we're going to do, and I'm going to ask Teresa, this is where you really need help, is to put the breakout room link to the breakout room directory in the chat. And so people have that, because when I send you off to the breakout rooms, I really won't be able to communicate with you verbally unless I physically, unless I enter your room. And you'll see, and that's kind of, I might do that to check in and see how people are doing. And Teresa, if you could also put the discussion prompt, and the prompt is one practice that you could try to make your online meetings more effective. So when I put you into those small groups, that's what you're going to discuss. Now, a couple things are going to happen. I'm going to work some magic with the magic setting called breakout rooms. And it's always really stressful for me to do this because I don't know why, but I've done it so many times, I shouldn't be stressed. But what it will do is it'll pop up this option for me to automatically place you into different rooms. So I can say place 5 people in a different room and it automatically does that. Or I can place you manually. And so what I'm going to have you do, so when I start to do this, and then I have to do, if I do 5 participants per room, I think I'm going to do 10, I'm going to do 10 rooms. Yes. Let's see. So what I'm doing it now is I'm looking at the dashboard that allows me to put participants into breakout rooms. And I'm going to put you into, each person is going to go into one of 10 different breakout rooms. And when you look at that Google link, that bit.ly link that we put in the chat, you're going to see the breakout room directory. And you'll click on that link and that'll take you to a Google Doc with a listing of the rooms. And that's where you're going to take notes. When I actually put you into the breakout rooms, you're going to see a little invitation pop up on your screen and it says you're invited to join breakout room, and it'll be a number. You want to take note of that, or at least somebody will. And you accept the invitation and it will put you into the room. And then right now what I'm doing is just scanning to make sure I have everybody in a room. And when I click open rooms, you're going to see that invitation, and you're going to have about 7 or 8 minutes to chat about that question, which is also in the chat. You know, what is one thing that you can do to improve your online meetings? Maybe you want to introduce yourselves first. Don't take up the whole time introducing yourselves, and just talk, you know, amongst yourselves on that question. Somebody can take notes on the Google Doc, and then I will give you time warnings when it's time to come back to the full group. I'll give you a 5-minute warning. You'll get a 3-minute warning, and then you'll get a 1-minute warning, and that's there's a notice that's going to tell you that you're going to come back into the room. So that's your cue to do it. So now I'm going to open the rooms, and the one thing I'm just doing now is I'm going to make sure that Teresa is going to move to, okay, I'm going to have Teresa in a room. Okay, so I'm opening all rooms. Remember, you should see a invitation to join a breakout room, note the number, and then find on the Google Doc the place where you can take notes. Do that. Great. All right. I think we have everyone back. I hope that was a good experience. And so, again, we have a large number of folks in the call. If this was a smaller group and we had more time, I would probably invite somebody from each group to unmute and share a top line idea. And I think we have time for maybe, we're going to multitask. And this is a way in virtual meetings that you can actually make up a lot of time. And I love Cordelia, who's walking. I love that. You can actually do walking meetings in Zoom. You can all get on Zoom on your phones and do a walk. That's great. I love it. So we get a little tour of London there. So, so the first thing I'd like to do is I'm going to invite at least one person from each group to share one of their ideas into this Google Doc that I'm going to share in the chat. And you'll see that there's a table there. And if there's one person, and then it's okay if there's 2 of you that do it, but don't all click into the top row, but click into one of the rows, kind of spread yourself out and type in your top line idea. And then we're going to do a round of emoji voting. So hopefully everyone's finding the document. Let's see, I'm going to take a peek. I see some people in it. And again, don't all click in the top row, because what will happen is that you won't be able to type. But if a few of you could, you know, from each of the groups, share your top line idea. And I'm going to, hopefully this is, exit full screen. See if I can pull. Optimize. Okay. All right, typing in. Let's see if I can pull this up.
God, this is just too funny.
It is, isn't it? Okay, you know, Teresa, I'm going to ask you if you can share, can you share your desktop with the Google Doc?
Sure.
I'm having a little bit of a technical glitch. And see how great it is to have a co-moderator, because there's always something that happens. Do I have to give you permission to share?
Let me see. I think I can share the screen.
You may not. I might have.
Yeah, I can do it.
Oh, you were able to. Great. Okay, so if you could share, yes. All right, if you maybe scroll down a little bit. Right, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so to do emoji, okay, so we got a few ideas. This is something you can do after you've broken people into small groups, had a discussion about a proposal or some planning or some brainstorming. You get each group to type in their idea. Now everybody has the option of doing some emoji voting, and the emoji voting is like sticky dot voting when we do it in workshops. So you can cut and paste 3 emojis and paste them by the idea that you think are the best. You can put all 3 into one idea, or you can spread them out. The emojis don't matter because, you know, they're just for fun. And be sure to scroll down, and so you can take a look at all the ideas. And that's emoji voting. Great. So, so what we've done now, I've given you a few tips. We've done a virtual icebreaker. We have other ideas for icebreakers. I've modeled 2 different ways to make this interactive by using the breakout groups for brainstorming, and then coming together using a Google document to do some decision making. I mean, there's lots more we can do with the interactive pieces. I have a blog post that describes those, but I'd like to open it up now to any questions, and I'm going to also ask Teresa to kind of verbalize them to me from the chat. So if you want to put them in the chat.
Sure.
Or maybe if we exit screen,
Yes.
stop sharing, we can see people's faces. If you know, you can actually raise your hand. If you go to the participants list and you have the newest client, you have to download, you can go to your name, and then there's the more, and then you have the ability to raise your hand. Or you can just raise your hand like this if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question verbally. If it's easier to ask it in the chat, that's fine, but we're just going to open it up for any questions. And Teresa, if there were, oh, I see Amy Feldman has raised her hand. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you so much for this great opportunity to participate in this meeting. It's been very super and interesting. I wanted to ask, since this is a group of primarily nonprofits, if anybody so far has done a successful Zoom fundraising event that replaced an existing, you know, gala or convening that you were going to have, but that you've had to cancel because of the COVID-19, and that you've now pivoted into an online fundraising event where lots of people attend and you maybe sell tables and things like that, but virtually.
So if there's anybody who'd like to answer in the chat or mute themselves and share their experience with adapting a real life fundraiser to the virtual.
I can make a couple of suggestions on that. So we've just ran, it's much smaller than a gala or a dinner, but bingos are quite popular in the UK, and we've just run a virtual bingo event as it's quite a small sort of community type event. We had about 40 people take part, and we're rolling that out you know, to other groups and our supporters. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we were meant to have a dog festival. It's quite a successful event that's happened over the last 10 years, raises quite a lot of money for the children's hospice that I work for, usually in a sort of the grounds of a nice big stately home. That's obviously been cancelled, and so we're going to trial having a virtual dog show, just for a bit of fun, really. It's not going to raise as much money as the actual event would have done, obviously, but yeah, we're sort of starting to look at, you know, quizzes and things like that that we can adopt virtually.
Right. So, Sarah, do you have any advice? Like the one thing that I would absolutely do or not do when it comes to adapting my face-to-face fundraiser to the online?
I mean, it's my fundraisers that are delivering these events. I think from what, you know, I think it's that planning and that preparation beforehand, and the practice run as well. So when we did the bingo night, our event fundraiser did a bingo night for the team, and we sort of gave her feedback and sort of just ironed out any of those sort of issues, really. And then we ran one about 3 or 4 days later, and it all went really successfully. So I think, yeah, having a trial run if possible is a good piece of advice.
Great. That's great. And I'm also going to drop into the chat a article from Julia Campbell, 5 tips, 25 ideas to make your nonprofit events virtual in an age of coronavirus. And so there's a lot of examples of fundraisers there. Teresa, did you see any other questions in the chat?
Emma added a comment saying we're looking at doing a pub quiz and considering Zoom. And Sabi was asking, would you recommend setting up a particular background, for example, sitting in front of a bookshelf behind when presenting?
Oh, okay. So like if, it depends, you know, for a staff meeting, maybe no, but if you're doing something formal, you know, for your organization, maybe you have some branding in the background. I've seen people with banners with their organization's logo in the background that they've had done at FedEx, I don't know, the printing shops. You can also make a virtual one. I saw somebody also give some information about what the sizes are for virtual backgrounds. And in the resource links, I have a couple of articles that tell you how to do it. So you could actually, you know, you could have a fun background. I've seen people with Star Trek. I see John with the American flag. He's changing his for us. I see some really interesting, I don't know what those are. John, what's your background? If you want to unmute and share. John Mayer.
A nuclear bomb going off.
Oh, okay, that's about accurate. And I see Lynn, you have, what is that in your background? I can't recognize it. You want to unmute and share what that is?
It is the Kuala Lumpur Petronas Towers.
Oh, okay, great. No wonder I didn't recognize it. And I'm scanning to see John's really, oh, I see Liz is doing something too. It looks like a beautiful nature.
That's when it goes wrong though, and you just disappear.
Yeah, so what Liz probably did is like, in order to do this, to do it like John's and have it be perfect, I think you need to have a certain level of an operating system or a newer computer. But if you stand behind, oh, I love what he's doing. Now he's doing a video one where it's blowing up. This is great. John's going to have to share in the chat how he did all this. Or he's just a magician.
Pixel Bay.
Okay. You have to stand in front of a white wall that's kind of flat, and then you use green screen in the setting for virtual backgrounds. I see Sami has one too. It looks like the Earth or an outer space, almost like Star Trek or something. Venus, Jupiter, something. Oh, Lee has the Northern Lights. Okay, so, and actually what some organizations have been doing for socializing, they have a happy hour. You can have a pub hour and everybody comes with a funny virtual background. And I'm seeing a lot, I put the links in the resources. There's funny filters and videos that you can do. Teresa, any other questions?
Tracy said we're running a virtual 5K tomorrow till the end of May using a raised roster, a company out of UK. Sarah says it's not a fundraiser, but we've switched a full day conference on 30th April to a virtual one. We've asked for speaker content in advance to create pre-recorded videos, followed by live Q&As and several panel webinars. That sounds amazing, and obviously I signed up for that.
That's great. So I'm looking at the time, and I don't want to keep you longer. That's one of my rules about meetings, that you start on time and end on time if possible. So I want you to reflect, you know, what's that one thing that you're going to take back to your organization to improve your virtual meetings? You can write it down, or you can share it in the chat. And speaking of the chat, I think Pauline just pointed out that, you know, if you look at the chat and you look at the right, and you see those ... you can actually save the chat. And I've allowed everyone to do that. So you can click on ... save chat, and that'll share it to your desktop. You have to see where Zoom puts it.
And I'll
so
make
think
sure
about what you want to do. The other thing I want to give you is, this is a Google Doc that has all the resources I mentioned, a copy of the slides. We'll also add a copy of the recording. Hopefully we did. Yes, we did it. That's another tip. I always make a big, on my moderator's outline, which is sitting right here, with the timings, I put a big note, hit record button. Because I can tell you that you know, it's just another thing to forget.
Amy's asking, how can we connect with Beth Kanter in the future?
Okay, well, you can always reach me on my blog. So that's www.bethkanter.org. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, at Kanter. I'm on LinkedIn. If you go to my blog, you'll see links to my social connections, and there's a form there to contact me through email. Always willing to chat.
And we'll make sure we have more sessions like this, and so make sure you stay in touch with us.
Great. So, well, thank you everybody for, you know, I know it's the end of the day, UK time. I know we have a few folks from the East Coast in the US, and some folks who may be in other parts of the world. I don't know what time it is, but it's really grateful that you decided to give us an hour of your time. And we hope that you can go forth and make your online meetings more amazing. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think at the end of this, there's lots of positives that may come out of this. I know right now it's awful, it's a nightmare, but I was thinking about, like, what are the rainbows that we want to see at the end of this? And maybe we'll all be better at digital, right? And we'll all be masters of digital meetings because we'll have done so many and know how to make them great. And maybe we'll even also be masters at online fundraising events and social, because we have, you know, we have to. And then at the end of it, maybe we'll come up with more innovative ideas, and maybe the world, maybe the new normal that we go back to, maybe we'll have just amazing new, better world. So I wish you a good evening, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.